So we're going to work on Osprey's molding and painting departments. We're going to use a plant-wide rate to allocate overhead, and then we're going to change and use departmental rates. And then we're going to examine the over and under applied under the two rates. So let's work on getting the plant-wide rate. The predetermined overhead rate is estimated overhead over whatever cost driver we're going to use to spread the overhead. In this case, they told us that they were going to use, in this case, they told us they wanted to use machine hours for the plant-wide rate. All right, let's go get those numbers. So the total overhead would be both overhead and molding and painting, and the machine hours would be the machine hours in both departments. And so we can get our rate. We then use that rate to allocate to the departments. So molding would be charged the $12.15 for each machine hour that they used, and painting would also be charged $12.15 times the machine hours they used. So the total would be both of those added up. And we'll round that up. So now we're ready for number 2. If they use departmental rates, what overhead would have been allocated, all right? So now we need a rate for each department, and they're not going to use the same cost driver. They've told us that. Molding is going to use labor hours, and painting is going to use machine hours. So let's get the rate. So for molding, the estimated annual overhead is the $500,000, and molding wants to use labor hours, so the estimated labor hours are there, and so the rate would be $222 per machine labor hour. Painting, their overhead is $150, and they want to use machine hours. So their estimated machine hours, 50,000. So their rate is $3 per machine hour. So this one is for labor hours, this one's for machine hours. Let molding charge for their activity. They want to charge $222 times labor hours. So let's go do that. Labor hours in January were 18,000. Okay. If you come through the painting department, you're going to get a charge, but it's not going to be based on labor hours, it's going to be based on machine hours. So there were 4,000 machine hours. So let's add those up. And we get 52,000 would be charged using the departmental rates. Now we want to look at over and under applied under both policies. All right, let's do that. All right, so I've set this up here so we can drop in our amounts. So under the plant-wide, we allocated 54. Under the departmental, we allocated 52. The actual was the same for both. I mean, the actual doesn't matter which allocation method you used. And so we get an over or under based on comparing those. So under the plant-wide rate, we have an over applied. Under the departmental, we actually have an under applied. That's not a problem that they're not the same under the two methods. You're allowed to use either method, and they're both estimates, and they're both going to be a little bit off from the actual. And when you're off from the actual, you adjust cost of goods sold for the difference. So here the adjustment would be slightly different, but that's okay. You pick a method and you use it consistently, and that's how you cost your product. But both methods are relatively close, but they don't have to be identical with each other.